On this week's 51%, we speak with playwright Juliany Taveras and Olympian Alexi Pappas about the art of writing for a younger audience. Taveras also gives us a preview of the new children's theater company production Morris Micklewhite and the Tangerine Dress, based on the popular children's book of the same name.
It just gets to the core of how we can experience pleasure from just the beauty of the world.
I'm Jessie King. It's all up next on 51%.
I was standing around like one of those girls I had seen in a movie. The whole world was a movie back then. I had my sunglasses on, I wanted to be seen without seeing shy Lolita. I wasn't really in it, I didn't really get it.
You're listening to 51%, a WAMC production dedicated to women's issues and experiences. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jessie King. Today we bring you a pair of interviews from writers specializing in children's media. The stories we tell each other are important at any age, but I think we can all agree that the books, TV shows, movies, and music we consume at an early age stick with us. And despite what you may think, there's an art to writing for kids. It's not just the easy version of writing for adults. And when done well, it can have a profound impact on adults and parents too. So we'll start out today by talking about the Children's Theater Company in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Starting October 10th, the company will host the premiere run of Morris Micklewhite and the Tangerine Dress, a new play based on the 2014 picture book of the same name by Christine Baldacchino. The book and play centers around Morris, an imaginative boy between 4 and 6 years old. Morris likes school, painting, stories about space, and he especially loves the Tangerine Dress in his classroom's dress-up center. As Morris starts to explore his own identity through the things that bring him joy, Baldacchino weaves together a sweet and nuanced story about gender identity, the stereotypical gender norms we impress on our children, and the courage it takes to be different. It also tackles the big question, do astronauts wear dresses? Playwright, poet, and photographer Juliany Taveras was tapped to adapt and build upon the colorful story for the Children's Theater Company stage. And even as an adult, Taveras says they were hooked by Morris Micklewhite and that special Tangerine Dress in the book's first pages.
It's so beautifully put. He loves it in this completely like grounded, magical, childlike, sensory way. So he sees this dress, and what he sees is a fabric that shimmers like his mom's hair and like sunsets and like tigers, because he loves tigers and animals. And that's why it's one of my favorite moments of the book, because to me that's such a profound and simple like capturing of like how we experience the world as children, and a little bit of that magic that we tend to lose as we sort of develop our prefrontal cortex and societal rules are absorbed into our bodies and all this. But you know, he's just seeing this thing that's beautiful, and he loves the sound that it makes, and the way that it feels when he moves in it. And I think that's just like it just gets to the core of how we can experience pleasure from just the beauty of the world. And so that's his dress. And you know, yeah, without giving it away, that it's something that seems so simple and that he loves, and to him it's just another beautiful, creative, imaginative thing that can help him with his adventures and his, you know, stories. And to his classmates, it's not as simple as that, let's say. So that's where things get sticky. But Morris is amazing, and I can't wait for folks to experience Morris on stage.
What was it like, I guess, having to take this picture book, which is pretty short? I mean, children's books aren't typically very long, but having to transform it into an entire production?
Yeah, I feel like for me, the adaptation process was really about trying to step into Morris's imagination as fully as I could, and then try to capture that, be like, okay, if this is how it feels to me, or how it sees to me, you know, how it looks to me, I should say, then how can I in words try to capture that, whether that's in my stage directions, right, being like, this is how I imagine this moment to feel, or the colors, or in the dialogue, right, in getting to expand certain moments. So really the adaptation for the stage is quite true to the book, because the book is wonderful. And what I was able to do was sort of just be able to expand on moments, because we have a little bit more time, right? We have it's a little under an hour, and that just means that what in the book is just maybe one illustration or a few lines of text. I was really able to step into and imagine, okay, what happens right before and after this moment? Like, what is exactly is being said by these children to each other, you know? And so I could really just kind of like that thing that you think when you're a child of like literally like opening a book and stepping into its pages, right? You used to really love Dragon Tales on PBS Kids. And it was kind of like that, where it's like you open the thing and then you go into the world of the story. So that's what it felt like for me trying to adapt it, where I was like, okay, how do I, and it's very, Morris driven for all of us, I think, on the creative team, just thinking about, this is his story. How is he seeing things? How is he feeling things? And of course, the other characters are super important and have their own journeys, honestly. But as far as like how we, the designing and writing the world, it's like really trying to get into the sweetness and the imagination. And then eventually at some point, right, the pain and the come up, right, the return from that dark place of Morris. And there were many drafts. We did a couple workshops in the spring, actually, of this year, and those helped a ton because I got to hear my words in the mouths of these amazing student actors and have conversations with them about their own experiences as young people right now. And that did a lot for the script, for sure.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the importance of having a show like this right now. The author of the book, Christine Baldacchino, has made it clear in past interviews that this is a book about gender identity. It's not just about bullying. And the way we talk and think about gender has been sucked into the ongoing culture war we have in the U.S. right now and turned it into a hot-button issue. I mean, the book has faced challenges from some parents who believe it shouldn't be read in classrooms or shouldn't be kept in school libraries. And yet, as you just said, this is an experience that some kids have. And this is, a subject that kids are exploring and having to deal with when they're at school.
Yeah. So like I said, I got to hear a lot of the students were so generous and insightful and giving with their own experiences and feedback when we were in the workshops, and even a little bit in our rehearsal process now. If the opportunity arises, we kind of sometimes take time to just sit down and be like, what do y'all think of this? And definitely in the workshops, because we were really focusing on the script, we had lots of great conversations, and the types of things they shared, it was both like uplifting and some of them really hard, right? It was really hard to hear that there was still bullying happening in school, right? These things that you hope will be better for the generation after you. And then at some, a little bit, you're like, dang, is this just always going to be a thing? And we just have to get better at navigating it. I don't know. So I definitely was heartbroken to hear their experiences with more difficult situations. One of our amazing young actors is like essentially just this brilliant trans advocate for young kids, and she also astounds me because I'm like, wow, you know so much more than I did at this age, and I love to see it. And also I like wish you didn't have to spend your parts of your childhood defending your own gender or the trans community, so I feel that sort of double-edged sword of that. And then something actually that deviates a little from the book is that in the adaptation, I did write in a teacher character, which is not really present in the book, because I think, the book, like I said, is so more centered in a way that I love, and we really tried to hold on to that. And also, we did think it would be interesting to like sort of have an adult presence, also different adult presences, right? So there's his mom, and then there's also the teacher, and how are they navigating things differently, especially because, like you said, there's all these things to consider. So we had that conversation a lot where we're like, well, the mom can be, completely supportive in her way because it's just her and Morris at home, whereas the teacher is navigating parents and other students and a school board and a state model, like all these other things that she has to consider. And so we talked a lot about like, how does that then influence how the teacher is responding to what she's seeing versus how, Morris's mom can receive him at home. So all things that we are carrying, and, we can only sort of do our best with this specific story to sort of capture those nuances, and hopefully it resonates. I really think that, or at least my hope, is that folks can come and see this show and see themselves in at least one or more of these characters, right? Because sometimes we're the Morris, sometimes we're the bully, sometimes we're the teacher trying to hold it all, sometimes we're the mom so there's a lot there. But I think it was definitely kind of threaded throughout our entire process.
I guess, what is it that you hope audiences most take away from the stage version of this story? Not just kids too, but, the adults in the audience.
For one, I just hope, I love children's theater. I hope that we can have more and more of it over time. So like off the bat, I just hope they have a good time and that they feel the magic of a theatrical experience, and that they are awed and inspired and, enjoy just the creative aspect. But as far as the story itself, the heart of the story for me is Morris's courage. And so I really hope that children can see the Morrises on stage, because again, we do have two really different, really wonderful Morrises, and be inspired by that courage. Because it's not easy to, especially in a larger sort of social context where there is this pushback and there is this sort of attempt to control who we are and our self-expression, it's not easy to resist that and to be joyful and authentic in our expression in the face of that. So I think, that would go a long way for me as a kid. And I hope that kids can come see that and be like, okay, actually there's, because the thing about courage is that there's a risk that's being taken. But what I love about the Morris story is that risk really pays off for Morris. And so I definitely want kids to see that. And like I said, I think I want them to see themselves in the other characters and maybe be like, oh, I've been the person to say a nasty thing or whatever. Because I think we all have, very likely that we've all been that person at one point or the other, especially when we're kids and we're growing up and we're figuring, we're just sponges and we just copy what we hear and we say it. That's something we talked a lot about, is that there's these different characters and how is there like power kind of between them, or this desire to sort of just look cool because you like this other person or they're your friend. And so I also hope that children can see themselves in those other characters perhaps, and see that that's okay if we can change. There's a couple of the characters who I really love their arc because they sort of start off kind of going with the status quo and being quite hurtful, and then they have their own transformation inspired by Morris's courage and end up acting differently by the end, is how I'll put it. And so I feel like I love those as well, because I think that shows kids and adults like we can change. We can actually wake up every day and make a different choice in terms of how we treat each other and how we express ourselves.
You said that theater is one of your artistic homes now, but it wasn't always growing up. You've said that, you didn't really get to dive into theater much until you got older, just due to a lack of an opportunity. For kids who participate in productions like these, tell me a little bit about the impact that can have, and I guess sort of the benefits of being a theater kid.
Again, one is fun. I think we know that play is important to like toddlers and children. And that's why it's sort of baked in even to schools. And there's a whole lot of design that goes into children's toys. But then I feel like there's this myth or this weird line of thought that then we hit a certain age and we don't need that anymore. Or we're supposed to sort of channel it into like something that's going to look good on a resume for college or something like that. And I think that we always, like at any age, I think it's such a special part and really good for our brains and for our hearts to have a place to play and to have fun. So I think it provides that. And at the same time, there's so much around collaboration and teamwork and co-creating something with other people that is so powerful. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that's what life is. Like that's, human society, albeit when it's in tougher eras or a little bit of a more violent stage, there's some tough stuff going on, but at the core of it is still, we're all just trying to co-create an existence together on this strange planet. And so I think that's like a very core presence of theater, is like you're just co-creating something, right? You have people with different skills or talents or interests coming together, whether they're building something or painting something, or they're acting, or they're doing the lights, or they're writing something. I think it's really beautiful to get to put all that into a collaborative process and then relish in like the outcome and celebrate the outcome. So I think there's a lot of value in it, for sure. When I was in the early rehearsals for Morris, the kids would be running around with so much energy, and sometimes we'll talk to them and they would say like, oh yeah, school was rough today, but I'm so glad I have you guys to come back to. They're so supportive of each other. It's my favorite thing. They love cheering each other on, the whole cast. And, to hear that even, again, it's like breaks my heart that their school is not the fun, safe place that I wish it could be for every student. But how beautiful that they get to have that space then to come together and create something and enjoy themselves and feel free to express themselves.
Juliany Taveras is the playwright behind Morris Micklewhite and the Tangerine Dress, a new production with the Children's Theater Company based on the 2014 children's book of the same name by Christine Baldacchino. It makes its debut on October 10th at the Cargill Theater in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where it will run through November 19th. It's a family-friendly show recommended for ages 4 and up. To learn more about the show and other productions by the Children's Theater Company, go to childrenstheater.org. Juliany, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. And thanks for taking the time and for sharing the word about this lovely story.
Just speaking from personal experience, I think for some kids, books can provide a special kind of escape during your preteen years. When everything is changing, friendships shift, relationships start, and your thoughts and feelings are all over the place. Our next guest, however, is encouraging kids to take an introspective look at the world around them, particularly at that time. Greek-American runner Alexi Pappas is a woman with many talents. In addition to representing Greece in the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio de Janeiro, she set the country's national record for the 10,000-meter race. She's made several films as a writer, director, actor, and producer, including the 2019 romance Olympic Dreams, which was the first fictional movie filmed in an Olympic village. Pappas has been very open, however, about her struggle with her mental health, reflecting heavily on it and her relationships last year in a memoir called Bravey, Chasing Dreams, Befriending Pain, and Other Big Ideas. Recently, Pappas released a children's adaptation of that book for readers aged 10 through 12. While it's not the same exact story per se, the young reader's edition of Bravey cuts some of the more adult situations explored in the initial book. Pappas says the goal was to connect with kids and help them get acquainted with their mental health at an early age. WAMC's Samantha Simmons sat down with the Olympian over the summer, shortly before the book's release, to learn more.
The young reader's Bravey is a little less memoir and a little more specific vocabulary shifts and just like how to approach chasing big dreams, managing mental health and growing up maybe a little bit different. So it's a little less anecdote and more, something you might carry around in your backpack for when you need it.
So where did the idea to make an adaptation to the book come from?
I'll be honest with you. Random House, I love the team there, and they asked me about it. And what was important to me, though, was really adapting the book and making it its own book entirely. Because the adult book deals with, things like being in a long-distance relationship and working with a partner and things that are maybe not as useful to a 9 or a 13-year-old. And so I felt really excited to go back in and do a real deep dive on what I think would have been useful for me when I was that young, or I mentor some young people that are around that age, and just trying to put myself in their shoes and not simply shrinking down a book, but actually making an entirely different one.
So how did it feel to kind of revisit, not the same book like you said, but kind of revisit some of the same topics again when making it? Like, what emotions did that bring up for you?
Well, I've grown a lot since I wrote the adult Bravey, and there are things that I evolved because I, Alexi, have evolved. Emotionally, I think the important thing was not wanting to prevent people from falling down, and messing up. And so I thought a lot about those moments in my life, but wanting to give them tools to help them get back up. And so I think the emotion for me came from maybe wishing that I had a little more help with getting back up when I was younger. Because I think I felt, I've soared high and I've fallen really, really hard. And that those feelings definitely came up for me as I wrote.
Something I noted when I was reading, I've read both versions of the books now, was that you talk about the body and the mind in such a raw way that I think a lot of other authors that are writing for a younger audience might kind of avoid or dampen and cover up. Like you used the word depression, you talked about periods, you talked about suicide. Why did you decide to not dampen your language when writing this adaptation?
That's a really great question. So, it's kind of like when you think about the difference between parents that feed their children kids' food and parents that feed their children adult food in a different portion size. And I grew up eating the same thing that my dad and my brother ate, and probably just as much food as them too. And I think that I respond well to people taking me seriously. And I think that the audience that I'm speaking to will eventually encounter all of these terms. And it didn't feel useful to create a Band-Aid term for the word depression. Depression it's an injury, and maybe the sooner we can embrace that and know it can happen and it's real, the sooner we can feel a little more comfortable with it and feel more helpable. So yeah, I think maybe it's kind of that kid food, adult food metaphor, where I understand some people might want the kids' food, and that's okay. But I would have liked to eat the adult food.
I think a lot of the younger audience will really relate to that because maybe they don't feel seen or heard, and being able to kind of eat that adult food will help them kind of fit in and with others.
Well, also, like, think about the world today. Like, they have access to these words more than we did when we were younger. And so it's not like we can hide these things from them forever. And I think it'd be better to give them something that feels like it's made for them rather than have them ingest this stuff in a way that is meant for an adult, you know, maybe using it is a bridge in a way, right? Because you're using the adult vocabulary for what it is, but you're trying to explain it in a way that feels digestible to them, you know, or relatable.
Have you encountered any parents or anyone at the publisher that thought maybe that wasn't the best approach to take?
That's a great question. Well, I will say that we aged, you know, the upper range of the book up a little bit in a way that it speaks to a wider range. The publishers, though, you know, my editing team, they were right there in the mix with me, and we made decisions together as to what to keep and what to leave out. And I think the strongest thing that we all felt was that the parts that we left out were some of the gorier, the more difficult moments that I myself experienced, but we didn't want to leave out the realities that are universal, right? And we all felt good about that. And again, who is it? Was it Haruki Murakami? Like someone, I think in his book, he talks about how he wanted to make a bar, and he wanted, you know, it's not going to be everybody's favorite bar, but there's going to be a few people where like it's the only bar they want to go to. And of course, this is a book. This is not a bar. This is for children. But I think that the motivation to be like a really special book in some people's lives is better than being vague and, you know, okay. So polarizing isn't always bad because it can do the most good too.
One of the quotes from the book was, "It can be embarrassing admiring someone so much." So how does it kind of feel to know that I'm sure there will be at least one, if not many, children, girls that kind of feel that same way about you as you felt admiring people when you were young?
It's hard to feel that way about yourself when I'm still doing so much growing, but it's also something I'm aware of, and it's a privilege. And I just try to be thoughtful about the words that I put out there, you know, particularly with books. A word is, you know, a book is a book forever. And even if you grow, you want to always feel like you are okay with somebody running with those words and interpreting them for themselves. I feel lucky, but I also feel tremendous responsibility, and I'm trying my best to like actually help. And that's what makes a book and not, you know, a journal, right? Like you're trying to communicate. So my goal is not to be their role model. My goal is to connect with them.
That's a really great point. What would you say was like the hardest part about writing the first book or this book?
Well, the first book, you know, in my book proposal, I didn't write at all about depression because it was during a time when I thought it might preclude me from getting a book deal at all. That seems wild today, but I promise you, at that time, I was like, they can't know that I had depression. And then that became a real tentpole of the book. The same goes for Bravey, for young readers. What was challenging for me was trying to talk about big subjects in a way that wasn't too scary, right? Because these things are scary, but reading about them shouldn't be too scary. So that's really it, right? The experience is scary and hard. Reading about it should feel supportive and, you know, only uncomfortable in the way that you might feel when you're in the dark at a sleepover, you know, like a little exciting, a little bit daring, but like you are choosing to be there, right? So that balance was like a challenge and a joy to find.
I want to add on with that, the glop hood. That was a new addition in this book that I thought was wonderful. I read it several times, that chapter. Can you kind of talk about what glop hood is?
Yeah, glop is, so I went through this like really difficult evolution in my own life after kind of, recently actually. And I learned that, and it was a good evolution, right? But it was hard, and my body hurt, like things were happening to me. I was changing things. And I learned that when a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, it goes into its chrysalis and it becomes this liquid glop. Like it doesn't just sprout wings, it becomes total liquid. And I had a mentor tell me that when I was in this time, that I was not a hot mess, because that was what I was calling myself, but that I was glop. And it was such a beautiful way to look at it, because it made me feel like it was natural and good, and even I could celebrate the pain of change. And it also, reminded me that I'm not a caterpillar, and that even though, a caterpillar can't choose to not become a butterfly, I could choose to try to reverse all this discomfort and stay a caterpillar forever. A caterpillar will become a butterfly no matter what. A human can stay caterpillar forever. And so learning about glop allowed me to embrace it and celebrate the changes I was going through and the uncomfortableness, and kind of like wear it as a badge of natural, exciting pride in a way. So, that's just one of the things that it helped me in my adulthood. But I think if I was a kid, I would have appreciated calling myself glop in times of great discomfort and change, because it's cool. Like it's fun to relate to nature in that way.
Mm-hmm. I want to move a little bit to kind of what you're doing now. What comes after the book?
I'm running 100 miles a couple days before the book comes out. I'm going to probably walk a lot of it, and we'll see if I even finish. It's going to be challenging. And then the book, I want to connect with young people. We're doing some book touring that'll be fun. And then life is sort of changing for me right now. Like I'm not exactly glop, but I feel like I'm in a subtle glop hood, because, there's a writer's strike in Hollywood, there's an actor's strike. And so my creative career is in an interesting place there. Running wise, I'm starting to guide for blind athletes. And I mean, the visually impaired athlete I guide wants to, we're running in the national championships. Actually, it's para-triathlon. So we're doing a triathlon. We're doing a marathon this fall. And so there's some running, but it's different than it used to be. And then the creative projects are different. And I also started a company called Bravey. And so I'm learning what it is to be an entrepreneur in a different way.
What entails the company?
Yeah. So Bravey it's founded by myself, and it's all women. It's my team is, the team is actually, it's small, but it's growing. But Sam and Christina are like my main partners, and we are doing a custom glitter, because all of my Bravies put glitter on for their races. So we're developing a glitter that will stay on when you run or when you dance. And that's been fun. We're making branded content with brands that I work with and brands that are, represent other people. And then my creative work will go through there too. So television or movies, or I'm starting to work through kind of a podcast path. So all those things, it's kind of this three-part company, and we'll see where it goes. Like, I think just like with the word Bravey, it kind of took on a little world mind of its own. I think with a company, you have to like know what you want, and also, feel the breezes, feel the wind coming your way.
That's so exciting. The glitter, any runner, or really anyone is, I think, going to love that. We've been speaking with Alexi Pappas. Alexi, thank you.
Thank you so much.
That was Olympian Alexi Pappas speaking with WAMC's Samantha Simmons. You've been listening to 51%. 51% is a national production of WAMC Northeast Public Radio in Albany, New York. It's produced and hosted by me, Jesse King. Our associate producer is Jody Cowan, and our theme is Lolita by the Albany-based artist Girl Blue. Just a reminder that you can listen to 51% anytime at WAMCpodcast.org or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can stay in the loop on all of WAMC's shows by signing up for our weekly newsletter Airwaves at WAMC.org. We hope you'll join us next week. I'm Jesse King for 51%.
I was every single girl, I was nobody else, I was so sure of myself. I was 15 and a half, he was a hollow laugh. And I lost my cool somewhere along the way. The nightmare down the hallway, I had to learn how to look away. I lost my cool, no electricity, hot rain on the concrete, sweet melting little girl dreams. They said, oh, I want a big life, not a house I could have been like. Where are you taking